Good afternoon, fans of historical fiction. We are so thrilled to be here today. Today, I am invited as a friend and fan of author Tanya Williams as she has released her latest historical fiction, Bootlegger's Betrayal. And it's the second one in the Vineyard series, and we're really looking forward to bantering back and forth as Tanya and I do so well about how things have become what they are in the story, what led to one part to the next, and leave you wanting to know more. Looking forward to this conversation with Tanya.
Hello.
Hi, Tanya. Congratulations. Oh my goodness. I know you don't look up from the page for very long, but I hope you took a moment to celebrate the Bootlegger's Betrayal.
I did. I definitely did.
You have a little process in how you celebrate to kind of put a period at the end of that sentence before moving on to your next book?
It's usually a glass of wine.
Yes, I was going to assume that.
It's my indulgence. It's even if it's a Tuesday, it's a glass of wine.
Absolutely. Well, it's like so many, like each book I've read of yours, it takes me maybe half the chapter to be like feeling encapsulated into this story. And I'm not just saying that because I love you as a friend. It's actually, I'm like, oh my gosh, sometimes it takes a chapter or two to me to like, okay, be patient, grind into this book a little bit more, get to know these people. But with yours, like, I'm like instantly like, and maybe some of that is because I know you and I get you ish. I totally get you. I would never say that to a creative.
You do.
But I truly, I found the same thing exactly with this. I was so curious about this person, even though you had shared with me a while ago when this Meg lady first came to visit you. And I think we'd all love to know a little bit more about the bootleg queen who came to visit you. So you would like to share some of that?
Sure. She was prickly. For sure. There are some protagonists that come across and they make me a little afraid because I think I'm going to have to spend a lot of time with you. So I'd really rather we get on.
Yeah, well, let's get going here.
Right. So Meg, it was interesting. The process of the story came together more like a trickle, which it doesn't usually happen that way for me. Usually it's a boom. It's a here's a building. Oh, that's it. I'm going to write about that. And all these people start coming out.
Right.
But Meg's story was a trickle, and it kind of started with just, a little research. I've been doing a lot of research for the past 5 years now on wine, wine, vineyard life, Prohibition, women's roles in vineyards and during Prohibition. And I really dug into it because it's fascinating, and I've learned way more than I ever probably needed to know about vineyard life because I don't own one. And
maybe
and I'm good with that.
I know on the first one of the series, I was like, oh, I wonder what that would be like to do.
Right? So I've altered my dream on that.
Yeah.
I would like to live on a vineyard,
yeah,
but I don't necessarily want to own it, if that makes sense.
Yes, for sure. Yeah.
Because there's
in your first one, you were very like your protagonist was this sweet, humble, but motivated young woman. And now you're giving us Meg.
Yes. Yes, the cantankerous old woman.
Yes. And so you're saying you felt a little bit like June in trying to get something out of her?
Yes, she was really she was kind of one I had to like coax along. I had to get her to trust me. And even though when she appeared to me, actually, you and I, along with some other people, had celebrated the release of Growing into Greatness, and we'd actually done so at a vineyard.
Yes, I remember that. That was
and we had a lovely afternoon in the sun, and it was lovely. And I went to sleep that night, and Meg appeared. Very, very strong. Like she was like, she's kind of like, she was in my face strong. And she she literally started out with the first line of the novel, which has stayed the same all the way through. Usually things like that get edited,
Yeah.
but it stayed, and it is, I'm 76 years old and my give a damn's busted.
Huh.
And I was like,
Oh,
whoo,
that gives me goosebumps. I remember you first sharing that. Yeah.
like, who are you? And then she rambled for a long time.
Yeah.
And she did say quite clearly, clearly in a gravelly voice,
Yeah.
she was like, you should be writing this down.
Yes.
And I was like, yeah, but I don't want to leave this conversation, because
Right.
if I
Right.
get up and get a pen and write this down, then does that imagination disappear? There's
Right.
always the risk.
Yeah.
And I was tired of
Yeah.
it. I was
Right.
sleepy. I wanted to
Because it
sleep.
was the middle of the night, you know,
It was
super
probably
easy.
3
I
a.m., I'm
bootlegger,
guessing,
right? She's a night owl.
right? And all
The
good
daytime begins for
ideas,
them around midnight.
right? Good ideas happen either at 3 a.m. or in the shower, right? So you
Oh,
not conducive to writing things down.
yeah. Yeah.
So she rambled a lot, and then eventually she said, "You can call me Meg." And I was
Hmm.
like, "Okay, Meg, you came
Yeah.
with a name and everything."
Yeah. So do you think that that was, the first key to her letting you a little bit closer in and starting to be willing to, as she shares in the story she gave you, how she knows she needs to share, but is still hesitant because of the amount of betrayal that she has experienced to this point?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I
Yeah.
would say that every single character I've written appears in a different way.
Yeah.
And sometimes they're sneaky
Mhm.
and they
Mhm.
don't tell you the things you need to know until you're a good ways in.
Mhm.
Um, and but Meg was, it was almost like her story was burning
Mm.
within her, and
Mhm.
she wanted, there was an impulse to get it out,
Yeah.
but there was also an impulse to cover it up and bury it, and
Right.
not, so there was, right from the beginning there was this tension of push and pull with her.
Yeah. Yeah.
So getting her to open up was probably very similar to how June
Yeah.
approached getting Meg to open up. Like, it's
Yeah.
not, I wouldn't say that I'm June by any stretch of the imagination. As an author, there's always little bits of you in every
Yes.
character you write.
Absolutely. Yeah. Good and the bad.
But yes, that's exactly what I was just gonna say. Sometimes my inner voice comes out and I'm like, "Ooh, that was maybe a little snarky,"
Yeah.
which is great for fiction,
Yeah. Yeah.
but
Yeah.
don't let it out in real life. Kind of thing.
That's why all you fiction authors are just so sweet on the outside at the conferences and on your podcasts, and then you're writing down what you really want us to know.
It's interesting because sometimes my characters will say something and I'll be like, "Oh, I don't think we
Yeah.
can say that."
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Do you have any boundaries, that you have with
Mhm.
that where you'd be like, "No, actually, that's not gonna get put out there, so character, you're going to find a way to deal with that."
Yes,
Yeah.
I do. I
Yeah.
do. I probably couldn't tell you exactly what they are, because um, there are characters that, actually, I think in the one that I just sent off, there was a moment, I don't even remember what the moment was. There was a
Mhm.
moment that something happened where I was like, "I'm not so sure about that."
Okay. Yeah. Good. Good.
Because it may be impactful and it may
Mhm.
be a great sentence,
Mhm.
but it also might color the character in a way that you don't want the reader to view them.
You
So
mean, like, kinda give too much emphasis on a characteristic that you will overshadow what you really wanna say with
yeah,
that person? Yeah, yeah.
yeah, like, you have to be very careful. It's not,
Discerning, right? Yeah,
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 yeah, because readers bring to the story their own experiences.
yeah, so true, so
So,
true.
and
Yeah,
it's impossible for an author to, know what everybody's experience is
yeah,
before they read their book. I
right,
mean, that would
right,
be wonderful if we could,
yeah.
although my brain would be really full. But it would
That would be a few, "You are you writing this down?"
yeah,
Notepads.
no kidding. I would be Post-it noted to death.
It'd be back
But
to old school dictation sort of forms.
right?
Yeah, yeah,
Gosh.
for sure, for sure.
So
And so you bring June into the story, because Meg is saying that there's more like stuff needs to, and we start to feel that pressure rising for her, that
Yeah.
this needs to get done. She's going to have to break through the pain, the betrayal,
Wow.
and she is forcing herself to find a way to trust this young version of a woman who is determined and wants to go against the normative of, a male-led society at the
Yep.
time.
Exactly.
And so how did those two come online together?
It's kind of funny actually, because I don't remember where I got June from.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. It was
I mean,
just
there's no way I could have told the story from just Meg's perspective,
right.
because there would have been literally way too much in her head back and
Yeah.
forth. She
Yeah.
would have argued herself
Yeah.
into oblivion.
I think we call
And
that ruminating.
yes, hmm, I don't know anything about that at all.
Nothing at all.
So, but June was she's like the she's kind of like the counterpart,
Hmm.
but yet at the same time they have a lot of through lines together.
Yeah.
Um,
Mhm.
but the difference in age is also really interesting to me.
And how was that? How was that difference, interesting to you? And, like, in what way? I mean, I know
Um,
when we have kids of one generation and we are
yeah,
in another, and you get your kid saying something like, "Oh, that's so Gen X, mom." You're like,
I
"What's that
know,
supposed to mean?"
right? And
Yeah.
I'm not sure whether I'm to take that as an insult or
Yeah.
yeah. It is kind of like that, where it's like this youthful um, vibration and
Mhm.
this determination to stand her own ground and prove people that she can do it.
Yeah.
I love that tenacity.
Yeah.
And yet Meg has the same tenacity,
Yeah.
but different life circumstances.
Yeah.
But she was just as tenacious. She was just tenacious to her own detriment.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so they played off each other
Yeah.
really well. And
Yeah.
it's always interesting to me because some readers go, "Oh, I love June."
Yeah, right.
And I'm
Right,
like,
and then
"Because you're
I
supposed to."
kinda see a parallel between the 2, in the inspired one of the things I was thinking about was while I was reading and watching this relationship develop was, like, Meg could kinda look at her and go, "Oh, I wish I'd been like that when I was younger."
Yeah.
And June going, "Oh, I wanna have what she has to be able to push through what I wanna be able to do." And both of them have that same kind of foundation as loyalty and don't want to be betrayed by loyalty
Yes.
to family, and one has already experienced what happens with that, and the other one is afraid of having that happen.
That's exactly it. Like,
Yeah,
their fears aren't that different,
yeah,
and I
yeah.
think that that's quite common actually throughout humankind,
Right. Do
you
you
know?
think that because you're inspired by, women in history when you're putting your stories together, and that seems to be a bit of a common thread for you, is that you seek out women that have, pushed against whatever they've pushed against, and
Yeah.
just to move that wall a little bit more forward. And, what brings you to wanna do that? What inspires you as an author to come to that and keep bringing us these books where we're inspired by every walk of life?
And I think that's what it is. I think the every walk of life, the woman, the regular woman going
Mhm,
about her life,
mhm,
who's faced with challenges that
mhm.
mirror what we face
Yeah,
today,
yeah.
um, which has always fascinated me
Mhm,
because our wants and needs and desires are the same as
mhm,
humans
mhm.
in 1920 as they are in 2025.
I agree. Yeah, yeah,
So, but our struggles are different. The
yeah,
external challenges are different, but yet some of them are still the same, which
yeah,
is
yeah.
mhm, something to know.
We could go down that
Go
path.
down that path, but it's a path.
And we see other, as you love, like, and I totally respect and appreciate how you bring into not just the women's um pushing through boundaries. You do that with race barriers
Yeah.
when it was Vancouver, whether, and then should we mention the tunnels?
The tunnels. The tunnels, that was a real
If you don't know what I'm talking about, go find out.
There actually is a real tunnel system
I believe it.
underneath the town of Elko in Nevada.
I
Not
thought
that I've
that was
ever been there.
so brilliant. Yeah,
I
that
actually
you
don't
brought
wanna
that in.
go.
No, no, no,
Not I'd go to Elko. I don't wanna go under the
no.
tunnels. Like, that
Yeah,
would
no, there's
kind of
not a lot of underneaths I want to go to
yeah.
either.
Exactly, right?
Especially when
It's
we read
kind
a
of
little bit more into that story as to why.
exactly, and it
Yeah.
was those tunnels were built by the Chinese immigrants who
Mhm.
came to Elko to help build the railroad.
Yeah,
And at the time, the Chinese were not allowed to be out of their homes after sundown.
yeah.
I know, I don't get it.
I
Just
don't want to understand that
I don't
thinking.
wanna understand it.
Yeah,
And so but tenacious as they were, they built these intricate tunnels
yeah,
around the town so that they could go visit one another and
yeah,
stay in touch with family
yeah,
and friends and everything
yeah,
after the sun went down. So it's
yeah.
brilliant.
Yeah, it really
And,
is, and
you know, when
so
history and fiction meet,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
like the best
Yes,
because you can
yes,
go nugget of history,
yes,
learn something. I
yes,
learned something, and still it actually served the story really, really well.
yes, it did. And talking about serving a story, how about George?
George. I have so many
George,
mixed
oh,
feelings about George. He's
George.
a bad boy.
Yeah, we could go on and on about amazing, strong women, but sometimes what makes
Yeah,
us stronger can be George's.
right? Like, he's you know, I did an author notes, I don't know if you saw it, but I did an author note about bad boys in
Mhm,
historical fiction, and George is one of those the kinda guy that I want you to kinda like,
mhm.
but
Yeah,
dislike his actions,
right,
so
right,
that you can see why Meg
right.
would be
Yeah,
on to him, why she
yeah,
wouldn't kick him to the curb,
right.
right? Like,
Yeah,
she was invested
yeah,
all the way up until,
yeah,
well,
yeah,
long after, you know,
yeah,
30 years later,
yeah,
invested. So
yeah.
yeah, and he was actually inspired by, um, a research
Yes, of course.
and somebody whose name was George,
Yeah, I love it. That's
and
great.
he was I read different accounts of this George,
Mhm.
and I can't remember quite if they're the person that the Meg's character was inspired by is Stella Bulamuni,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
so
yeah,
I can't remember if Stella and George actually cross paths.
yeah.
I think they did, and that's where
Well,
the
you
connection
mentioned
was.
them married, divorced, married, and then,
So she wasn't actually married to George. She was
got
married
to
to
George.
somebody else,
Okay,
but there was
okay,
a George in their gang of
okay,
misfits
okay. Yeah,
um, that had this knack for evading
yeah,
prohibition
yeah,
agents. Like,
yeah,
he was bold, and
yeah.
that story where I mentioned him, asking to see the bottle that he's just been so
Yes.
prohibition agents are in front of him,
Uh-huh.
and
I was like, "Oh my gosh, only
right?
a so and so would think to do something that"
You gotta be gutsy, and
Yeah,
he asked the probation agents, "Well, can I see that bottle?"
yeah,
And he took the bottle and he smashed it against the
yeah,
steel pipe, and the
yeah,
bottle was destroyed, and the evidence was destroyed,
yeah.
and they couldn't arrest him because of it, and that actually happened.
Yes, yes.
That's
We
George.
I could get how someone could be sharp enough to do that, but we also know that with George, that with
Yeah.
everything that was going on in his world, he probably would have walked away no matter what was found in that bottle, because he
I
was a
believe so.
slick dude.
He was.
And
He
he had
was
connections.
yes, he had connections, and I think people were fooled by his he was
Mhm,
affable. He was,
mhm,
they wanted to be in his company.
mhm,
He
mhm.
was charismatic.
Yeah,
But yeah, he was a total crook.
yeah.
So
Yeah, totally, totally. Yeah, and he comes across as the vivacious, somewhat leader, and then,
yes.
as things develop and stuff, we know that that's not necessarily his main role, but we're not gonna talk much more about that, like I said.
You have to read the book
That's
to
the
find
book.
that out.
You will not be disappointed, right to the last chapter. Um,
Yeah, that was hard.
Yes, yeah, but again, it was I'll say a woman's loyalty, not that we can't say that,
Yeah,
that there's men out there that would have the same kind of loyalty to somebody
absolutely.
that they
Mhm.
believe in or love, but in this case, that was part of the betrayal story
Yeah,
for our dear Meg,
yeah.
and so now you've got this is book number 2 set in the vineyards and the wines and stuff, and other than tasty beverages and nice warm sunshine, what brings you to vineyards?
I love a good setting. I am
Yeah,
I am a big advocate of a story setting being one of the characters.
right, right.
And I have always been drawn to a vineyard.
Okay.
I don't know whether I'm drawn to farms in general. Um,
Okay, yeah,
so
like growth
that's
and productivity and
yeah,
yeah, the
exactly.
community that can happen. Yeah.
And,
Uh,
and I'm one of those people. Okay, this is probably too much information. I am I'm
Never.
one of those
This is a
people.
banter.
We're driving down the road, we're going for a drive or we're on a road trip or something like that, and there's a field of cows. I'll go, "Oh, cows." I'm that person. It's not that there isn't cows around here. I see cows all the time. So,
Right.
but
Yes. Yeah.
I
But
love
it's cows in California or it's cows in another,
seeing
know.
exactly. I love seeing just animals and nature in general. So,
Right,
as long
right.
as, I say that, but I'm not inviting, cougars and grizzlies
Yeah.
my direction.
I mean, they all have their place on the food chain, but rather not be
Ex
part of that food chain and,
Pretty much.
won't wanna see evidence of it. Um, and
Exactly.
and so with bringing in, like, your appreciation for the setting and that kind of stuff, when you are going through research, do you have a specific way or plan when you're researching something?
Mhm.
Or, because we've seen the accuracy throughout all of the books
Yeah.
that you've done. I mean, the one in Seattle, and where
Yeah.
you dive deep into that. And one of the things that I love with historical fiction is the languaging. And tell
Yeah.
me a little bit about, how do you research languaging for the era and keep the terminology and even the slang on
Yeah.
point?
Yes, that can be a challenge. The etymology is, one of my it's an
Yeah.
open tab as
Okay.
I write.
Cool. That makes sense.
Um,
Yeah.
but I think when you spend a lot of time in research and if you're reading a lot of, documents, newspaper clippings,
Yeah.
well, I watch a lot of documentaries,
Yeah.
about different eras and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then, it's going to places like for, Growing into Greatness, like, I
Mhm.
dug in for
Yeah.
4 years doing the
Yes.
research,
Yes.
and it was
Yes.
it was a long time coming, and spending the time at the Napa Historical Society
Mhm.
where I kid you not, I was going through, like, arrest warrants
Mm.
and,
Wow.
it's stunning the research that is there and, train tickets and,
Wow.
like, all this stuff. So you
Yeah.
take those little itty bitty snippets,
Mhm.
and if you place them throughout and you sprinkle them throughout, a
Yeah.
reader gets the sense of being immersed in an era
Mm.
by just the way people move and how they navigate their world.
Mhm.
And that's a win for me. If
Right.
if a
Right.
reader has been immersed and they feel like they're a fly on the wall, then
Yeah.
I've done my job.
Okay. That's really cool, because that's definitely a lot of the sense I have when I'm reading your books. It's like, "Oh, I'm there," and now funny question, how sometimes you can watch a movie and it maybe has some British humor, Scottish, Irish, you hear these accents. Do you
Yeah.
find yourself using any slang from, like, the 20s or 50s when you're, like, at Save On Foods grocery shopping or anything?
I didn't think I did, but a friend has pointed it out. She's like, "Oh, you sound like Louisa from
Oh,
the Hotel
yes,
House," and I was like,
yes.
"Really? I
Yeah.
wasn't intending," but you get in your
Yeah.
you get in your character. It depends on where you are in the writing process, but you do get in your character's head, or they get in yours. And
Right.
I've
Right.
been known to say things. She's like, "That's a very historic saying." Like, yeah, but when you find a good one, you keep it.
Yeah,
Keep it
exactly,
close.
and I mean, the benefit is that we know that a lot of it is a lot more clean than some of the expressions of slang
Yeah,
today, so it's not like you're gonna get in trouble.
well, exactly. Although, now that you say that,
Yeah.
words have different meanings now.
So true. So
So
true.
there's some things
Yeah.
where my son is 25. So
Mhm.
if he reads something, he'll be
Mhm.
like, "I don't think you should use that word." I'm
You're
like,
right.
"Why
Right.
can't I use that word?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Here's the etymology of it. This is what it means." And he's
Right.
like, "That's not what it means now."
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I find it difficult to balance
Mm.
today's era reader with
Right.
historical accuracy.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a challenge because
Yeah.
you have to be true to both.
Mhm. Mhm.
So
And I guess does content help with that? Like, if the person's reading in the content, or is it still kind of like some you're just like, "No, I better not."
yeah, there are some that I just kinda avoid,
Yeah. Yeah.
and,
Yeah.
it's sometimes it's sad because it's a good word,
Right.
like, they're just somebody says a word and I go, "Ooh, that's a good word."
So we're
Like,
sitting here talking about all these words, but we're not using any of them.
no, okay, so I'll give
Any
you
you
an
wanna drop
example.
in so that people know what we're
Kerfuffle,
talking about? Which one?
kerfuffle.
Kerfuffle.
Isn't that a great word?
I think I use that word.
Right? It's historic.
Yeah.
It's how, people would get, like, all rattled.
Yeah. Yeah.
They'd be in a kerfuffle, or if there was an exterior commotion, it would be a
Okay.
kerfuffle, like,
Right.
that
Yeah.
kind of thing. So,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah,
Any of the ones that we shouldn't use
so
that
a
you
lot of the slangs from the 1920s would probably actually not be identifiable.
right, okay.
So
Yeah,
there when you
yeah,
find one, you go, "Huh, I don't know who anybody's actually gonna know this one."
right, right.
But I did use, like, for example, Matteo,
Uh-huh.
Meg's brother,
Yeah.
calls her a blue nose.
Yeah,
So that
yes,
was, a
yes.
1920s term for a goody two shoes.
Okay, interesting. I
Yeah,
think now we use a different shade, or a different color about a nose
I think
when
you're
we're
right.
talking about someone who kind of not necessarily a goody
Yeah.
two-shoes, but kind of like is, trying to work up to somebody's charm or,
Oh, yes, 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 it's a brown.
brown, that's the color.
Yes.
Which is more of a ickier picture.
Yeah, exactly. Isn't it true? It's words have such power.
Yeah, and
Really
again,
do.
that term may not be something our kids would use, right? But
Nope,
it's something that,
because we
when I
grew up
was
with
in
that.
in elementary school, that would have
Yeah,
been a term that somebody would
yeah,
have called another person if they were sucking up to the teacher,
exactly.
you know?
Exactly, pretty
Yeah.
much.
So, yeah,
Yep.
yeah, well, language is amazing, and it
Yes.
keeps, so many stories out there, just absolutely worth reading when and sometimes I believe that it can also make stories harder to read, but,
Yeah,
and then
yeah,
we need our authors like you doing the research and understanding where they come from,
yeah.
and how to use them and how much to use,
Yes,
because
you
that's
have to be
you don't wanna be, like,
light-handed.
peppered with
No.
historical stuff, and then you're like, "Whoa, whoa, you lost me," like,
Yeah. I
or
do not enjoy info dumps myself, like,
yeah,
I
yeah,
just
like you're
don't.
trying
If
to tell us or
Yeah,
teach us everything about how we should talk,
that's the
you know?
key, is that
Yeah,
every piece of a setting or every, sort of prop
yeah.
that, like, Meg's sweater, for example, is a prop,
Yes.
and
Yes. Yeah.
it needs to have value to her,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it also needs to be viewed from June's perspective
Yeah.
as, "Is that not a little odd?"
Yeah. Right.
And but it also has
Right.
to have an also underlying, meaning to it so
Mhm.
that
Mhm. Yeah.
the reader understands the importance, but the sweater alone throughout the story
Mhm.
tells its own story.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's this those I love those through lines,
Mhm.
and I have to say they just kinda happen.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't
Well, you have that, I kind of refer to it more as like bridging throughout your story, things like, like being cold, that reference to cold and on more than one level, more than just the physical cold, like the emotional cold,
yeah,
that distance, that Meg experiences in life, and references and conversations that are seem somewhat, you know, sidelined, but the teapot,
yeah.
and that's gonna bring a bridge, and things like June needs to go back and get her car, and you
Yeah,
create these bridges, and how do you do that? Like, is that again just part of each time, you
it's
know, you wait for it to happen, or you
mm,
have it pre-planned as you get to know your
mm.
characters, as you bridge the main parts together?
It's not pre-planned, I can tell you that.
I kinda know that answer, but I wanna hear you
I
share
kinda would like to, if anybody has any suggestions on how to make that pre-planned.
No, no, keep doing what you're doing. Don't change it.
It's more of how to get a character from point A to point B,
Right.
but there has to be a reason,
Yeah.
and there
Yep.
has to be a payoff.
Yeah.
If a character simply goes to get her car, but there is absolutely no stake involved, there's no tension, there's no conflict,
Mhm.
she's not facing anything, she's just going to pick up her car, nobody
Boring.
cares,
Yep, yep. Why did you put that in? I
including
don't need to know that. That's common sense.
exactly. So you can because it's a fictional world, you can just position the character at the next place. She
Yeah,
didn't have to go pick up her car,
yeah,
but
right.
I forced her to.
Mhm. Yeah.
But I also
Dad reminded her that it wasn't
yes,
her car.
yes, her dad did remind her that it wasn't her car. Now there's a conversation that's happened in every household who has
Yes,
children throughout
yes,
the years.
yes. Yeah.
So I'm pretty sure the day that the cars hit the
Yeah,
the, humanity, the
yeah,
conversation started.
yeah, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so it is the bridges, they happen, but they don't happen in the first draft.
Hmm.
That
Oh,
makes
okay, interesting.
yeah, yeah,
Okay.
it's a layered approach. Like, I'm an outliner
Mhm.
because
Yeah,
I like to know well, it's a double-edged sword, actually. I like to know what's going to happen so that I know what I have to write.
right.
But I also fight the, desire to abandon the project because now I already know the ending. So
Well, I
why do
know,
I
so
need to write
there's
it?
a bit.
'Cause I really write to entertain myself,
Oh, that's
and I
beautiful.
ha
I love
and
that.
I've done that for well,
Yeah,
since I was very little.
yeah,
So, I like that I can entertain other people, and that is my
yeah,
job to
yeah,
entertain other people, but
right.
it has to get me. Like,
Yeah.
if I laugh or if I cry
Mhm,
or, I have mixed emotions,
mhm.
that's what I want the reader to have as well.
Hmm. Okay, well, thank you for that. Thank you.
I
And so
like the crying, I'm sorry. Sorry, folks.
I don't think that there's been one yet that I haven't, been choked up or cried in,
Yay.
and there's the obvious parts of the but
Yeah,
then there's the ones, like you said, each of us are reading it from our own experience, and that there's gonna be a part that's gonna speak to each of us as readers in a different way, and,
absolutely.
and I always cherish the authors that honor that with continuing to sprinkle in the bridging, the tying things together and stuff. And now my understanding is that no one sees the first draft other than like, so you just do your outline, that's your first draft, and then you go back and then you find how you're gonna put
Yeah.
it all
It's
together.
so I will do a outline that
Yeah.
is,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
messy, very,
Yeah.
very messy,
Well, that
very
gives us all
messy.
hope. You make
It's
the
so
best people.
so messy.
Yeah.
Nobody gets my editor doesn't even see that. And
Perfect.
then I will go in and do a little bit more of a formal outline
Mhm.
where it's more like it's is the word statico?
Mhm.
Where it's da 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 da
Oh,
da
yes. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
like that
Yeah.
because I now have to explain the story
Right.
to
Right.
somebody else. So now I've got to explain the premise of the story to my editor.
Yeah.
And so we edit in a different way than most writer authors or
Oh,
writer editors do.
yeah.
And we developed this system because okay, because I didn't like
Yeah.
going back in to a 80,000 word draft
Uh-huh.
and having to move whole sections around.
Mhm.
I was
Mhm.
really not happy about that. I was
Yeah.
not a happy person when I had to do that. And so
Mhm.
I said, "Is there any way we can do a developmental edit, which is like a helicopter view of the story
Mhm.
at the outline stage?"
Mhm. Yeah.
And she's like, "Oh, well, yeah, why don't we try that?"
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so my outline is not like a page. It
Right.
is like a
Yeah.
30-page document,
Yeah. That makes
and
sense.
it's chapter by chapter, and I'm listing the what's gonna happen in each chapter. So
Mhm.
then she is good enough to be inside my head. I
Yeah.
love this, that although I'm sure it's scary for her, but I
Yeah.
do love that she can do this. And
Yeah.
so she, looks at that outline
Mhm.
and then comes back to me, and we have a call
Right.
where we go through it, and then we brainstorm back and forth the parts
Mhm.
that are missing,
Right. Right.
and then we kind of I write notes and fill in the gaps, and then I take all of that and go and write. Now it's gonna be a 3rd draft by the time I
Okay.
get to this.
Yeah.
This is a 3rd draft, and I
Yeah.
write it through,
Yeah.
and then I actually I edit along the way. I do,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, always. So I always find my first chapters are really quite strong because I go back and keep on tweaking them. Whenever I get lost or I feel like I'm in the weeds, I go back to the beginning.
Okay. And you
So,
read from there,
yes.
and then yeah. Yeah. Must take incredible patience to do that.
Well, I don't ever consider myself a very patient person.
It's your characters you're patient for.
Yes. Well, they because they change, and
Yeah.
they sometimes throw wrenches in, and yeah, for me, they are real.
Yeah.
I know that sounds crazy, but they're real while I'm writing them.
Yeah.
But, 2 years from now, I may have trouble remembering June's name.
Right.
So,
Right.
because
Well,
you
I'm sure
kind of
you're gonna meet a lot more people between now and then.
right? They I will say that it's literally the
Mhm.
moment I let go of one,
Mhm.
fresh people come in.
That's incredible. I mean, not to talk too much about for myself as a reader, when I'm reading these stories, I need a moment after
Yes.
I put a book down.
Yep.
Like, I'm not just
So do
picking up
I.
the next one.
Yeah.
And when I hear that you can finish a book, send it off, it's in and you are into your next one, I'm going, "How do you do that?"
I do take a break. I do
Okay.
take a break in
I
between.
yeah, no,
Yeah, but
I'm
it's
sure you get better and better with the habit of turnover, but
I
no,
would
hey?
love to say you would, but I
Okay,
haven't found that yet, no.
okay,
I find
okay.
that you grieve them.
Yeah,
It's like moved
yeah,
away,
yeah.
like
Sometimes
your
I'm
best
like
friend just left.
I'm looking for stuff. I remember Brene Brown talking about a time where she was in a moment of like sorrow and difficulty dealing with some stuff in life, and she shared with us, how, she deep dove onto oh, what was that TV series? Downton Abbey,
Oh,
because
hello,
she
yeah, I'm there.
doesn't want to let
Yes,
go.
yeah,
And sometimes I'm researching characters. I'm like, oh, what really happened there? And you've talked about a few different laws and things like that that have
yeah.
happened. What was the one that inspired the perfume
Oh, the
front?
femme soul.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
things
it's
like that. It's like I want to know more about
stunning.
all of these different things, and it must be hard to not overpack,
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
all of that.
Yes, yes, but what's the easy part is that, you have to immerse yourself in the information, but then you have to actually convey it in a couple of sentences.
Yeah, yeah,
So you could read and read and read and read and read and
yeah,
still only get a couple of sentences.
yeah, yeah.
Um, so
Would
it's like
that be
prose.
referred to like as the backstory of
Yeah,
characters, like who they are as a person? You have to know all of this stuff, even though me as the reader may never know that.
absolutely.
You just need to know it to be able to put that person on the page for
Yeah.
the 3 or 4 sentences.
The
Yeah.
challenge with that is
Yeah.
remembering what you know versus what I know.
Right.
Yeah, that is
Oh,
a challenge.
yeah, yeah. That's like Christmas dinner with the family, and you're not quite sure who knows what part of whose person's story. We gotta
Yes,
be careful of how much we let go. Kinda
exactly.
like what we're
It
doing today, where we, wanna
Yeah,
talk about all of the dynamics of the story without,
giving
giving
away
it
the
all
ending.
away.
Yeah,
Yeah,
'cause there's
yeah.
lots of secrets in this one, and,
There are, and it's like I found like into chapter even like 5, 6, 7, 8. I'm like, okay, already. What secrets are? And then something would be revealed and shared, and you're like, oh wow, okay, that makes sense. And then you're like, oh wait, that wasn't it. And there's more, and there's more, and then these other little bridges, and you're like, and like, where does it? And then you're like, okay. I try not to cheat and flip to the end on those kind
right.
of like,
You'd be
just put
searching at
me
the
at
end.
rest so that I can read in peace.
It's
But yeah.
very, very true. That was one thing I struggled with writing this, was how to, because it kind of has that vibe of a mystery,
Mhm, mhm.
because you do need to pay attention,
Yeah,
to the little clues, that there are clues along the way,
yeah,
but
yeah.
and there are red herrings along the way. And so
Mhm.
but I've never written historical mystery, although I think I might at some point. I
Ooh.
think I might, because I love a good secret
No
in
kidding.
terms of a story and
You
trying to
love
figure out what
leading us
happened.
along.
I do. It's total manipulation, I
Yeah.
fully admit. It's
Yes. In a
it's
sweet
for
kind of
entertainment.
way.
It's in all the good ways. It's
Yeah,
it's not,
it is. Yeah,
anything nasty at all. It's really about escape,
yeah,
and, we all need escape from
yeah,
our lives,
yeah.
even really wonderful, happy
Oh,
lives.
absolutely, absolutely. Yeah,
We
no,
need to
it's like
escape.
just our life is just one life. Let's see what else is going on out there.
That's it.
And
Exactly.
and I know with for Meg, she had so much to share
Yeah,
because a lot of her secrets there was shame around and
that's
pain
right.
and loss so that laid out her not just
Yeah.
like she talks about not just her past but her future
Yeah,
and
it's well, her shame stole from her future.
totally. Yeah, yeah. And again, reading that, I was thinking about people who live in that
Yes.
state, even now, with different choices they've made. Maybe not
Yeah.
all of them necessarily landing you in jail,
Yeah.
but you were in charge and got away with it. But it could have.
Absolutely. But I
Yeah.
like to write things that, give people permission
Mhm.
to face something difficult and
Mm.
move past it.
Yeah.
I think that's important, is a
Mhm.
part of life, and I think if you bury your head in the sand, um, you don't see much, you don't experience much,
Yeah.
and all that you do feel is the emotions that aren't necessarily entirely healthy on their own,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
The rain is wonderful because we have the sun to balance it out.
Yeah.
Life is like that. We need to see all sides.
And you really gave us in the story where Meg had to balance holding on or
Yeah,
sharing.
yeah,
Even and then at one point she had to choose between the pain of being alone or the
yeah,
pain of possible rejection.
yeah.
And
Huge
that
one, right?
right, and both of those are massive human like fears, being alone or
Exactly.
being rejected. They can almost feel like the same thing. And
Yeah, that's
and
exactly it. It's the same sharp end of the same
yeah,
knife. Mhm.
exactly. And it's like, do I risk it,
Yeah,
and earn the being alone, or do I be fearful of it may or may not happen and then still end up alone? So
exactly.
and we got to watch her battle with that, with her relationship with June, and we see what happens in the end with it. You know?
And it's not an easy thing for a person to go through. And
No,
I think that I don't think there's one right way
no,
either. I think that
no.
we all come with our own, view of the world and our own rose-colored glasses,
Yeah,
and it's
yeah,
up to us to decide. But the point is for that each individual has the ability, and the permission to decide what's right for their life.
Yeah.
That's,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah. And sometimes it takes a little prodding from someone like June to help us just be like, get over yourself. What's going on?
yeah,
Tell me.
exactly. We all could use a little
It's
June.
typical out of respect and stuff to, to not want to cause further pain, but she too had to
That's
balance that, you
that
know.
is exactly it.
Yeah.
Nobody likes to be in pain.
No,
It's,
no. Yeah. Yeah.
but yet I will say as humans, we have no problem holding on to fear.
Yeah. I know, right?
So,
We're working on it.
yeah,
It's the never-ending
collectively.
story. It's the never-ending story. And when it comes to never-ending stories, do you have anything you want to share with us about what else we might get to be looking forward to?
Well, the next book coming out is a Hotel Hamilton novel.
Yay!
So it's funny. I had some readers think that book 3 in the Hotel Hamilton was the end, and it is not.
Okay. Okay.
Book 4 is called Whispers of Her Worth.
Okay. Oh, I love it.
And you're going to be surprised by what it tackles.
Okay.
There was something that happened in Canada that I knew nothing about
Huh.
until actually my husband, because I literally, this is how the conversation went. I have to get an outline to my editor in X many weeks, and I
Yeah.
have absolutely no idea what I'm going to write about.
Right. Right.
And he's like, well, what era are we talking? I'm like, it's 1928 now. I'm
Okay.
like, it's on my list. I got to sit down and do research and figure out what happened in 1928 in Vancouver.
Yeah. Right.
So within 20 minutes, I've now left the task to another day.
Yeah.
I am now engrossed in a rewatch of probably Downton Abbey actually at the time.
Of course.
There's never too much Downton Abbey.
Never. Never.
And he's Googling away.
Huh.
And he tells me about this thing that happened. I was like, you've got to be kidding. And he goes, no, this is real. And so now this thing that happened, I am mad. I am like so irked about it. And I'm like, all of a sudden, I'm like, oh, I can just see Louise's response.
All right, then. Well, we know it's going to be fiery.
Yeah, it's one of those things that I was shocked that it happened. But you can find out in the fall.
I'm looking forward to it. I'm so excited about that. And as much I don't have the Vineyard series on my shelf right now because I've lent it to somebody who needs to read it to be ready to read this next one here. Do we have more things that'll be coming from the warm lands of grape growing?
Absolutely. Absolutely. The third book is in my head.
Yay.
The characters are really fun.
Awesome.
I think it might take me a little longer to write.
Okay.
I'm looking at a potential of 4 point of views.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. I do love that.
Editor first.
Yeah. We won't hold you to it, but whatever comes from it,
Yeah, it's one that intrigues me a lot. It's 4 sisters actually.
Oh, I love that. Yeah.
So, but they're all very different. So
Never find more different people than in one family.
right? So true. So true.
Yeah.
So I would love to tell you more about that, but
no, we'll let them come to you. We will let them come to you. Well, Tanya, this has been so intriguing. I love it. I love learning about your process, how things come. I never get tired of listening to the development of your stories and stuff. Right from the very first one, Mr. Smith and the family, where you brought that all to completion, and that really set you on a road to writing. And yeah.
It's amazing, isn't it? It's hard to believe. It's been about almost 10 years.
And I'll reflect. I mean, anyone just dropping in and wondering who the heck is Tammy? Tanya and I would met each other through triathlon. Tanya owned a triathlon store, as hopefully some of you know about. She hasn't written about us triathletes yet. Not quite sure if she's ready for that. It's a couple of sessions about having to deal with us. um, but we met and we connected. Both had similar injury stories and recovery on that, and we would get together and meet for breakfast at White Spot in South Surrey, and she shared with me about her real passion for writing, and I was so excited and so proud of you as a friend who really stepped up and did what you said you wanted to do.
I'm
And
gonna cry.
no, like truly, I mean, I'm like, yes, and my friend has written another book. And I'm still out there sweating on a trainer with a whole bunch of paper with no
One of us is in better shape than the other now.
well, it's the FOMO. I joke about it's sunny outside, I should be outside, or it's like I should be writing. It's
a balance.
Goal. It's a hard one.
It is. I mean,
it was we make it,
but had we not, had the triathlon store, and had we not gone down that path, I would never have met you.
I know.
And I think we've known each other for got to be 17 years or so now.
I'd say I think I was trying to work back towards my first long distance after an accident, and that would have been around 2012, 2015.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
There, and you had the endless pool, and was like, "Come swim in my pool."
Endless pool. We do love a good endless pool.
Right now we just want to float on it.
We don't have to swim. No.
Exactly.
Yeah, it was a whole different world. It was a completely different world. It was crazy. It was busy.
Yeah.
It was, and I have to say, writing is far more sane.
Yeah. Well, you found your balance. You found your balance, and you are so loved and supported by your family. Dave is amazing at supporting you in what you do, and just really being such an incredible best friend beside you, and making right down to creating that little writing alcove for you.
I know.
I think about that. I'm like, to me, it's like I remember reading Stephen King's memoir book on writing, and he talks about writing in the back alley, writing in the stairs. Like, if you're gonna write, you're just gonna write. It's not about having the ideal location, the ideal time, all the time.
There is no ideal time
against you, it doesn't push the story out, the way it does, to have that sense of urgency, and hearing you talk about 2 or 3 books down the road in two different series is pretty exciting, knowing that it's not ended for you yet. You have got a long way to go, and lots to share with us.
I hope so. It's it's funny because I have actually I do a little post-it note when I have an idea. I should have a better system, surely. But post-it note, and I saw a social post the other day that I was like, I see it. That's the story.
Yeah.
And I'm like, it takes very little to get me excited about a story. So it's like literally, one little social post.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I already know what's happening.
That's awesome. I love that. And I think that the more a creative is immersed in what they love, the easier that flows. It's like you refer to the tap and the trickling and the, and that it just won't stop. And the more that you're thinking, the more you're working, like anything, whether we're in the gym, on the bike, or behind the writing table, it's going to become easier and easier. Not easy, but like the flow is there, and there's a sense of moving through the process rather than getting stuck in it.
You're absolutely right. And I actually, now that you say that, I recognize the flow aspect of when you're having a good ride or you're having a good run. I won't say you're having a good swim, because I don't think I ever had a good swim.
It's a bit boring.
Very repetitive, and there's no scenery involved at all.
Can't talk to anybody.
There's a flow that you get in. There's a rhythm. There's something that is almost energy creating.
Yeah.
Within a workout like that. And writing is very similar, although it does not burn as many calories and does require way more M&Ms than
now we know your secret.
M&Ms they're doled out one at a time.
If we ever see an Instagram post where you may refer feeling a little stuck, don't be surprised if you end up with a bunch of M&Ms on your front doorstep. We're going to help you along with that.
I keep telling Dave, "Please don't bring me anymore. This is
Yeah.
a bad habit. Give me carrot sticks."
Oh, I don't know.
It's something I think it does take a lot of energy as
Mhm.
well. So when you're exercising, you fuel your brain, you fuel your so it will keep thinking as you're on a bike and going,
Mhm.
30
Yeah.
kilometers an hour. You need that brain capacity, and the same is for
Yes.
writing a book.
Absolutely.
So,
Yeah.
there
Absolutely.
there are parallels, so it's actually not that shocking.
No, no, absolutely. Oh, well, thank you for your time on this, and as Meg says, I hope you're writing this down. Thank you, Tanya. So
Thank you so
excited
much,
to read what
Tammy.
comes next.
Thank you.